Hello, miladies of inestimable value. The world breaks everyone, and afterwards some are strong at the broken places. Ernest Hemingway. But what Hemingway didn't say is that some people don't just become strong, they become untouchable, cold, detached. Not because they want to, but because life gives them no other option. Here's a fact. Studies show that emotionally independent people are often the ones who've been let down the most. They weren't born cold-hearted. They were sculpted into it, one betrayal, one disappointment, one wasted effort at a time. And if you think Sigma females are the exception, think again. They start off open, hopeful, even willing to give people the benefit of the doubt. But the world doesn't reward that kind of softness, it punishes it. Slowly the warmth fades, the walls go up, and before they even realize it, they've become something others fear, admire, or resent. A woman who no longer gives a damn in a world that took her kindness for granted. This isn't about becoming heartless, it's about survival. So how does a Sigma female go from caring too much to caring almost nothing at all? The answer is brutal. It's real, and once you see it, you'll never unsee it. Number 1. They embrace the fact that being cold is just another word for being selective. Being called cold is almost a compliment to a Sigma female at this point. It's not that she lacks emotions, it's that she's done wasting them on people who don't deserve them. There was a time when she gave freely. She was warm, open, willing to understand and accommodate. But that kindness was met with selfishness, that patience was met with games, and that loyalty was met with betrayal. So, she adapted. She learned the hard way that emotional generosity is a currency most people don't appreciate until it's gone. Now, she's selective. People who don't know her say she's detached, distant, even intimidating. But those who truly understand her know the truth. She's not cold, she's just careful. She doesn't entertain pointless conversations. She doesn't engage in meaningless relationships. She doesn't stick around when she sees red flags. And that terrifies people because they're used to others tolerating nonsense. They're used to second chances, to endless understanding, to emotional labor being handed out like free samples. A Sigma female? She walks away without looking back, and that unsettles people in ways they can't even explain. What makes it even more infuriating for others is that she doesn't announce it. She doesn't give warnings. She doesn't make dramatic exits. She just slowly withdraws, and by the time people notice, it's too late. She's gone, emotionally and physically, and the worst part? There's no getting her back. Once she decides someone isn't worth her energy, that decision is final. Yet the irony is, she's not actually emotionless. She feels deeply, but she saves it for the rare few who prove they're worthy. To those people, she's one of the most loyal, warm, and deeply connected individuals they'll ever meet. The difference is, not everyone qualifies, and that's what society hates the most. The fact that she refuses to play by the rules of constant availability, forced politeness, and blind forgiveness. People call her cold because they don't know what else to call a woman they can't manipulate. They mistake her silence for indifference, her boundaries for arrogance, and her self-respect for hostility. But she doesn't care. She's done explaining herself, done proving anything to anyone. If the world wants to call her cold, so be it, because the truth is, she's not cold. She's just done being burned. Number 2, they realize that caring too much is a slow, self-inflicted death. Caring too much feels noble at first. A Sigma female starts off believing that if she loves deeply, if she's loyal, if she stands by people no matter what, she'll get the same in return. But reality has a different lesson. The more she cares, the more she suffers. Every time she opens up, she's met with betrayal disguised as friendship, manipulation dressed as love, and ingratitude masquerading as entitlement. And slowly, painfully, she realizes caring too much is nothing more than a slow, self-inflicted death. She's been the person who checked in when no one else did, the one who stayed up listening to other people's problems, giving advice, offering support, being a rock for everyone. But when she needed the same, silence. Suddenly people were too busy. The ones who once poured their hearts out to her had nothing to say when she was the one drowning. And that's when it clicks. She was never truly valued. just used for her ability to care. She tries to justify it at first. Maybe they didn't realize how much she needed them. Maybe they meant well. But then it happens again and again, until the pattern is undeniable. The more she gives, the more people take. The more she invests, the more they expect. And no matter how much she bends, it's never enough. That's when she understands her kindness is seen as a weakness, not a strength. So she stops. Not all at once, but little by little. She stops chasing, stops over-explaining, stops checking in. She watches who notices and who doesn't. And when the silence is met with silence, she knows she made the right choice. It's not bitterness. It's not resentment. It's self-preservation. Because every time she cared too much, she bled for it. And she refuses to keep wounding herself for people who wouldn't even hand her a bandage. Now she moves differently. She listens, but she doesn't absorb. She helps, but she doesn't overextend. She loves, but only those who prove they're worthy. People call her changed, say she's colder now. They're right, she is. Because the alternative was carrying herself into exhaustion, into disappointment, into emotional ruin. And she's done dying for people who wouldn't even live up to their own words. Number 3, they lose interest in fixing relationships that should have been buried. At one point, a Sigma female believed in fixing things. She held on to friendships that had expired, relationships that drained her, and family ties that were nothing more than shared DNA. She gave chances, had the difficult conversations, forgave, compromised, and tried to meet people halfway. But then it hit her. Some connections aren't broken, they're dead. And dead things don't heal. They rot. She remembers every time she extended herself for people who wouldn't do the same. The one-sided efforts, the endless patience, the hoping that this time things would be different. But they never were. It was always her doing the work, her carrying the emotional weight, her fighting to keep something alive that the other person had already let die. The worst part? Some of these people knew exactly what they were doing. They enjoyed watching her fight for them while they put in the bare minimum. They knew she had a heart too big for her own good, and they exploited it. But she's not that woman anymore. She doesn't beg for reciprocation. She doesn't chase closure. She doesn't lose sleep over people who wouldn't lose a second for her. When a relationship becomes too exhausting, too forced, too one-sided, she stops trying. Not out of spite, not because she wants revenge, but because she finally understands. Some things are meant to end, and instead of fearing endings, she starts embracing them. Now, when someone shows inconsistency, she doesn't ask for explanations. When a friendship feels draining, she doesn't schedule another heart-to-heart. When family members prove toxic, she doesn't force a bond just because of blood. She quietly lets go. No dramatic exits, no final warnings, no desperate last attempts. Just a gradual withdrawal until one day she's simply gone. People notice, but they never expect it. They were used to her being the one who always tried, the one who always forgave. But this time, she's done. And that scares them, because now they're the ones wondering what went wrong, what they could have done differently. But it's too late. She's already moved on, no longer interested in fixing what should have been buried long ago. Number 4. They realize that love is often just a weapon in disguise. At first, a Sigma female believes in love the way it's sold to her, pure, deep, and transformative. She gives wholeheartedly, thinking that love is about connection, understanding, and growth. But over time, she sees the ugly side, the side no one warns her about. Love isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a weapon. And the people who claim to love her the most, they're often the ones using it against her. She starts noticing the patterns, the way love is dangled over her head like a prize she has to keep earning, the way it comes with unspoken conditions. Do what I want, tolerate what I give you, accept my flaws without question, and maybe I'll keep loving you. Love stops feeling like warmth and starts feeling like a leash, a tool used to keep her exactly where someone else wants her. When she tries to walk away from toxic relationships, suddenly love becomes a guilt trip. But I love you. As if those words alone should erase all the pain, all the neglect, all the manipulation. When she sets boundaries, love is turned into an accusation. If you really loved me, you wouldn't do this. Love is no longer a safe space. It's a weapon designed to keep her in line. And the moment she realizes this, something inside her shifts. She no longer falls for the words. She watches actions instead. She no longer lets love be an excuse for mistreatment. She stops believing that love means endless sacrifice, tolerance, and self-abandonment. If love starts to feel like a trap, she refuses to stay caught. People call her cold for this. They say she's afraid of love, that she pushes people away, but she's not afraid. She's just not willing to be controlled. Real love shouldn't feel like a battlefield. It shouldn't require her to constantly prove her worth or compromise her peace. She still believes in love, but not the version people try to sell her. Not the one used to manipulate, guilt trip, or hold her hostage. So she rewrites the definition. Love, to her, is freedom. It's mutual, it's safe. Anything less isn't love. It's control dressed up in pretty words, and she refuses to be fooled again. Number 5. They witness the ugly truth that people prefer them when they're weaker. The moment a Sigma female steps into her power, the shift is undeniable. Suddenly she's not as likable as she used to be. People who once adored her now find her too much. They say she's changed, become difficult, harder to deal with. But she knows the truth. They preferred her when she was weaker. When she used to apologize for things that weren't her fault, she was seen as kind. When she tolerated disrespect in the name of keeping the peace, she was labeled understanding. When she over-explained herself just to avoid making others uncomfortable, she was praised for being considerate. But the second she stopped, the moment she set boundaries, spoke with confidence, and stopped seeking approval, that's when the complaints started. She sees it clearly now. People liked her better when she questioned herself, when she watered herself down to be more digestible, when she made herself smaller so others could feel bigger. The world has a strange way of rewarding insecurity and punishing self-assurance. A weak woman is easy to manipulate. A strong woman, she's a problem, and the pushback is relentless. Friends start calling her distant. Family accuses her of being selfish. Men who once admired her now say she's too independent, all because she refuses to play the role of the agreeable, accommodating, self-sacrificing woman they were comfortable with. At first, she wonders if she's doing something wrong. Should she soften up again? Should she go back to being more pleasant? But then it clicks. She's not the problem. Their comfort with her weakness was. And if being strong makes her difficult, so be it. She would rather be difficult than be walked over. She would rather be alone than be surrounded by people who only valued her when she was easy to control. Now, when people call her too much, she hears too strong for them. When they say she's changed, she knows it means she stopped being who they needed her to be, and she's perfectly fine with that. Because she has no interest in being liked for her weakness, only respected for her strength. Number 6. They stop explaining themselves because no one actually listens. Sigma females don't waste their breath on people who aren't truly listening. In the beginning, they try. They explain their boundaries, their choices, their silence. They believe if they communicate clearly, people will understand them better, treat them with more respect, and stop making assumptions. But then, reality smacks them in the face. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply, to argue, to twist their words into something that suits their own narrative. They notice how conversations turn into performances, where the other person is just waiting for their turn to speak. How their feelings get dismissed with a quick, "You're overthinking it," or "That's not what I meant." How people pretend to care about their perspective only to immediately flip the conversation back to themselves. It's exhausting. It's pointless. And eventually, they stop trying. They no longer justify their decisions. If they walk away from someone toxic, they don't sit there explaining why. If they choose to be alone, they don't waste time convincing others it's not loneliness, it's preference. If they say no, it's just no. No long-winded explanations, no over-explaining, no desperate need to be understood by people who never really tried in the first place. This shift confuses people. Some get frustrated, demanding answers they'll never get. Others try to push buttons, hoping to force a reaction. But a Sigma female has already mastered the art of silence. She's not playing their game. She's done performing for an audience that never truly cared about the story she was telling. Now, Her actions speak louder than words ever could. If she distances herself, that is the explanation. If she doesn't entertain certain conversations, that is the boundary. And if someone really wants to understand her, they'll pay attention to what she does, not just what she says. The world is full of noise, full of people who love the sound of their own voice but have no interest in actually hearing anyone else. A Sigma female sees through it all, and instead of wasting her energy on pointless explanations, she saves it for the few who truly listen. Number 7. They outgrow the fantasy that people will match their energy. A Sigma female enters the world thinking that people operate the way she does, with depth, honesty, and unwavering loyalty. She assumes that if she pours genuine energy into someone, they'll naturally reciprocate. But reality humbles her fast. She gives without hesitation, only to realize most people take without a second thought. She listens with intent, only to find that most people hear her just enough to respond, not to understand. She stands by people during their worst moments, but when she needs the same, silence. At first she gives the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they don't realize how one-sided things are. Maybe they just need time to grow. Maybe if she leads by example, they'll eventually match her energy. But the more she gives, the more she notices the pattern. Most people don't operate on depth, they operate on convenience. They appreciate her effort, but they don't value it enough to return it. And over time, this realization carves into her like a slow, painful truth. Disappointment becomes a familiar feeling, but not in a bitter way, just in a way that teaches her what to expect. She stops looking for herself in others. She stops assuming that just because she's willing to go the extra mile, others will too. And when she finally lets go of that fantasy, something shifts. She becomes lighter, freer. She no longer exhausts herself trying to make people see her worth. She doesn't chase loyalty, effort, or emotional depth. Instead, she just observes. She lets people show her who they are, and she believes them the first time. Now she moves differently. She still treats people with kindness, but without expectation. She still offers loyalty, but only to those who prove they deserve it. And when she meets someone who matches her energy, she recognizes it as rare, not as something she's entitled to, but as something truly valuable. The rest? She lets them be who they are while she walks away. No hard feelings, no dramatic exits, just quiet detachment. This shift makes people uncomfortable. They feel her pulling away, but they don't understand why. They never noticed how little they were giving in return, only how much they were receiving. But by the time they realize what they lost, she's already moved on. No longer interested in waiting for people to become what they should have been from the start. Number 8. They get tired of playing therapist for people who won't help themselves. Sigma females have a way of drawing people in, especially those who are lost, broken, or looking for someone to carry their emotional baggage. At first, they embrace this role. They listen patiently, offer deep insights, and genuinely try to help. They believe if someone is struggling, the right words, the right guidance, or the right support will push them toward change. But after a while, a harsh truth sinks in. Most people don't actually want to change. They just want a place to dump their problems. She starts noticing the patterns. The same people come to her with the same issues over and over again. They vent, cry, ask for advice, but never act on it. They complain about toxic relationships, but never leave. They talk about their miserable jobs, but never make a move to improve their situation. Every conversation is a loop, a predictable script, a never-ending cycle where they offload their emotional baggage onto her and walk away feeling lighter while she's left carrying the weight. At first, she thinks maybe she just needs to try harder, be more understanding, more patient, more available. But then it dawns on her, these people don't need help, they need an audience. They don't want solutions, they want validation. They don't seek change, they seek comfort in their own stagnation. And once she realizes this, her entire approach changes. She stops engaging in repetitive conversations that lead nowhere. She no longer wastes energy giving advice to people who ignore it. She refuses to be a free therapist for those who aren't actually doing the work to heal. If someone truly wants to grow, she'll be there. But if they just want a sounding board for their endless complaints, she's done. This shift is drastic. People who once relied on her emotional availability start noticing she's no longer there the way she used to be. She responds with short answers. She doesn't entertain pity parties. She lets silence do the talking. And for the first time, she prioritizes herself instead of carrying the weight of others. Some call her cold. Some say she's changed. But she knows better. She's just done being an emotional dumping ground. If someone won't help themselves, it's not her responsibility to keep trying. And with that realization, she shuts off her emotional availability like a light switch. No hesitation, no guilt, just freedom. Number 9. They watch people break their own rules, but expect Sigma females to follow them. Sigma females have sharp eyes and an even sharper memory. They don't just hear what people say, they watch what they do. And nothing turns them colder than witnessing the sheer hypocrisy of those around them. People demand honesty, but twist the truth when it serves their interests. They preach about loyalty, but turn on their own friends the second it benefits them. They act like victims while doing the very things they claim to despise. And the worst part, they expect a Sigma female to play by the rules they don't even follow themselves. At first, she gives people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they don't see their own contradictions. Maybe they're just unaware. But then it becomes undeniable. The same person who cries about trust issues is the first to gossip behind closed doors. The one who preaches integrity has a habit of bending the truth. The one who demands respect from everyone else is quick to belittle those they see as beneath them. And when a Sigma female refuses to engage in this nonsense, she's the one labeled as distant or too serious. She stops wasting time calling people out because it never changes anything. Instead, she quietly distances herself. She no longer entertains conversations dripping with hypocrisy. She no longer sticks around waiting for people to practice what they preach. She simply removes herself, knowing that trying to make sense of double standards is a battle not worth fighting. This shift unsettles people. They notice her growing detachment, but they don't understand why. They assume she's being cold for no reason, completely oblivious to the fact that they are the reason. They broke their own rules, betrayed their own principles, and now they wonder why she stopped taking them seriously. But she's not going to explain herself. She's not going to argue about standards that should be obvious. The only thing a Sigma female can do in a world full of contradictions is protect her energy. And if that means becoming emotionally distant, then so be it. She'd rather be accused of being cold than waste another second pretending she doesn't see the hypocrisy staring her right in the face. Number 10. Empathy feels like a weakness in a world that rewards manipulation. Sigma females don't enter the world cold. They enter it with hearts wide open. They feel everything deeply, often more than they let on. Their natural instinct is to understand, to comfort, to see the pain behind people's actions. But over time, that empathy starts to feel less like a gift and more like a curse. Because while they're busy trying to understand others, the world is busy rewarding those who manipulate, deceive, and take advantage. They watch as the most ruthless people climb higher, win admiration, and get away with things no empathetic person ever could. They see how fake charm earns more loyalty than genuine kindness. They notice how selfishness is often mistaken for confidence, while empathy is seen as weakness. And the longer they observe, the more the message becomes clear. Being a good person doesn't protect you, it makes you a target. The breaking point comes slowly. It's not one betrayal that changes them, it's the steady drip of disappointment. The friend who uses their kindness as a crutch but disappears when they need support. The partner who plays on their empathy to avoid taking accountability. The family member who manipulates their compassion to keep them tethered. It happens so often that eventually they start to question if their empathy is making their life harder instead of better. At first, they try to numb themselves out of self-preservation. They convince themselves they don't care anymore, that they're above it. But it's not indifference. It's a survival mechanism. They learn to detach, not because they want to, but because they have to. They stop offering emotional support so freely. They stop absorbing other people's pain as if it's their responsibility. They still feel everything, but they bury it under layers of silence and distance. People notice the change but rarely understand it. They call her cold, detached, heartless. What they don't see is the years of emotional exhaustion that made her this way. They don't see the internal war between wanting to care and knowing that caring too much will only get her hurt again. What they don't realize is she still has empathy, but now she's selective. She no longer wastes it on those who see her kindness as a tool to be used. Her heart is still there, but she guards it like a vault, opening it only for the rare few who prove they won't weaponize it against her. Number 11, they accept that closure is a myth. Sigma females spend years trying to make sense of the betrayals, the disappointments, the relationships that crumbled without warning. They replay conversations in their minds, searching for clues. They analyze people's actions, trying to understand what went wrong. Was it something they did, something they missed? If they could just get a real explanation, an honest answer, it would all make sense. It would help them move on. But the longer they chase closure, the more they realize it doesn't exist. People leave without explanations. They lie to make themselves look better. They rewrite history to justify their actions. And some simply don't care enough to give the truth. The realization is brutal at first. The idea that they may never get the answers they deserve feels unfair, almost unbearable. But then comes the epiphany. Closure isn't something they get from others. It's something they give themselves. The day a Sigma female wakes up and decides she no longer needs an explanation is the day she frees herself. She stops overanalyzing. She stops waiting for apologies that will never come. She stops expecting people to suddenly grow the integrity they never had. Instead, she accepts a simple truth. Some things will never make sense, and that's okay. This shift changes everything. She no longer seeks validation from people who didn't value her. She no longer wastes energy trying to understand why someone betrayed her, ghosted her, or treated her like she was disposable. She realizes the why doesn't matter. What matters is that she's done caring. People notice the change, and it unsettles them. They expect her to seek answers, to reach out, to demand explanations, but she doesn't. She moves on without fanfare, without dramatic goodbyes, without giving them the satisfaction of knowing they had any lasting effect on her. That's when the tables turn. The moment she stops caring is the moment they start wondering what happened. Closure isn't a conversation. It's not an apology. It's not getting the perfect ending tied up in a neat little bow. It's realizing that some people don't deserve a second thought and walking away without looking back. Cold-hearted? No, just done. Sigma females don't wake up one day and decide to shut people out. It happens over time, layer by layer, wound by wound, disappointment by disappointment. They don't stop feeling, they just stop showing it. They don't stop caring, they just learn to be selective. The warmth is still there, buried beneath the armor, but only a rare few will ever get close enough to see it. They are not bitter. They are not broken. They are simply women who have outgrown the illusion that everyone deserves access to them. They have learned that some relationships are meant to be let go, that closure is just another form of control, and that the world rewards those who play the game without a conscience. So they adjust, not by becoming ruthless, but by refusing to be anyone's fool. And if that makes them seem cold, so be it. They would rather be misunderstood than emotionally drained. They would rather be alone than surrounded by people who mistake their kindness for weakness. They would rather be called distant than allow another person to walk all over them. Because at the end of the day, a Sigma female's silence is not emptiness. It is power. And when she stops explaining, stops proving, and stops caring about the things that once broke her, she becomes untouchable. If this hit home, if you felt even a fraction of this truth, then don't just leave. Be part of this journey. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video that speaks straight to your soul. Like this video if it resonated with you, and drop a comment below. Tell me your thoughts, your experiences, or even just a simple "I needed this." And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. Let's keep building this space for those who see the world differently.